Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome you all to this Cabinet meeting and quickly go over some general housekeeping. This meeting is being held in person at County Hall and is also being streamed live on the County Council's YouTube channel. The recording will also be available to view afterwards. We're not expecting a fire alarm, so if one happens during the meeting, please evacuate County Hall and make your way to the nearest exit and meet at the muster point, which is located on the main car park. So we'll move to the agenda now, and item 1 is apologies for absence, please.
We have apologies today from Councillor Jane James.
Thank you very much. Item 2 is minutes, and we need to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of January, which you'll find on your agenda starting at page 6. Can I ask if we can agree that they are a true record?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 3 is declaration of interests. And do Cabinet members have any interests that they wish to declare? No, no one is indicating. Item 4 is matters referred to Cabinet from select committees or by full council, and I have none on the agenda today. Right, moving on to item 5, updates from the Chair and Cabinet. And I feel that it's incumbent upon me to perhaps put some records straight. And everyone will have seen the recent press coverage and conversations on social media about the announcement made by the Secretary of State, Steve Reid, in the House of Commons last week, which relates to the Norfolk County Council elections that were due to be held this May 2026. Some of the things that have been said are wildly inaccurate. The Minister, Alison McGovern, sent me a letter just before Christmas asking for information on this council's capacity to deliver local government reorganisation and devolution in the face of all-out elections this year. So I asked officers to produce a factual information for the Minister on the situation as it pertained to Norfolk County Council. This information was sent to the Minister on the 15th of January, as was required, and that letter has been fully published. I received a further letter from the Secretary of State, Steve Reid, asking for some clarification, which I sent him on the 22nd of January. In my second letter, I said that I could not guarantee the delivery of LGR and devolution at the same time as holding all-out elections. There are serious governance issues around devolution, just for a start. There were no secret meetings or other letters. I've never met the Secretary of State, Steve Reid. I've never met the Minister, Alison McGovern. I've not even spoken to them on the phone. So I don't know where these stories came from, but it just goes to prove that you shouldn't believe what you read in the press. The reason that I didn't request a postponement to our elections in either of those letters was because I didn't consider it was my place to tell the Secretary of State what he should do. I considered it was better to give him all the information that he needed in order to make an informed decision on whether to proceed with our elections or not. And I think he made a pragmatic decision in order to ensure that the government's priorities, which are local government reorganisation and devolution, are deliverable in Norfolk. And I was grateful to him for consulting me before he made that decision. And we were honest with him, sending our officer's assessment of the risks associated with trying to complete 3 very large tasks, all at the same time. So it's entirely understandable why he came to that conclusion. And also, when other areas have been reorganised in the past, council elections have been postponed on councils that are about to be abolished. And the cost of an all-out election here in Norfolk is approximately £2 million. And that's taxpayers' money that could be better spent, perhaps on the setup of the new unitary structure, which we are waiting to hear about, and also those elections, which will happen next year in 2027. So I appreciate some people are unhappy about this situation. And I've no doubt the Secretary of State understands that none of us wanted to be in this particular dilemma. But he has made a decision, and I think it is the right one if we're going to see these major improvements of local government reorganisation and devolution delivered for the residents of Norfolk. So I'm sorry, but people like the MP for Great Yarmouth can bitch and moan as much as they like. The hard truth is we don't have the capacity to do all of these things, and so a hard choice had to be made. And it's also interesting to see the stance of the MP for South Norfolk, who clearly doesn't agree with his Secretary of State, which is probably why the Secretary of State is the one making the big and important decisions on the front bench, while he sits languishing on the back benches. So, I hope that I've set the record straight on exactly where we are. Our task now is to move forward, because we've been given the opportunity to deliver those government priorities, and I know they don't always necessarily align with our own, but if we can make better unitary councils for Norfolk, or a unitary council, which is what we would like for Norfolk, which is more efficient, cost-effective, less confusing for our residents, then that's what we've got to do. We've got to get together with our district and borough leaders and ensure that we deliver that. And on the back of that, we will deliver devolution, which is the money that we have been trying to secure for 10 years now to bring economic development to our region. And in conjunction with Suffolk, we'll make sure that happens too and get a mayor elected in 2028. Right. Have any other Cabinet members got any updates they'd like to give? Penny.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Leader. We all may have heard the good news last week. The Department of Education has confirmed that it will fund the full costs for 2 new special schools, one in Great Yarmouth and one in Downham Market. Members will know that we have been campaigning for the funding for these schools to be released since the general election, following our successful bid to the previous government. The schools would create 271 much-needed places for children with special educational needs and disabilities in the county, and I am now strongly minded to make the decision to move ahead with both schools. Back in December, the government wrote to us with an offer to proceed with the schools or take lesser sum of money to fund places in mainstream schools. That sum was about 13.7 million, and we estimate that the 2 schools will cost in the region of 40 million. We have been asking for clarity on whether the DFE will meet the full costs, and we received this confirmation last week. We have been in discussions with key stakeholders, including the trusts appointed to run the schools, and the evidence is clearly there for these 2 schools. Indeed, I have been frustrated at the length of time it has taken for the DFE to reach this point. However, I do have to follow the correct processes, and as this is a key decision with a significant sum of money involved, we do need to give everyone a chance to make representations on the matter and allow 28 days' notice required for a decision of this kind. As I said, I am strongly minded to move ahead, as I believe this is the best interests of our children and young people. As a council, we've delivered more than 900 specialist places in special schools and resource bases over the last 5 years. And if we move ahead, this means that we will have more than 1,000 extra places for children with SEND in our county. At the same time, we are wrapping more support around our mainstream schools so that they can meet the needs of more children with SEND. Our priority is to ensure all children with additional needs can get help they need as early as possible within their local communities, with specialist places for those with the greatest need. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's really, really good news, Councillor Carpenter. I think we're all welcome that, because it's something that we've been waiting to hear about. And perhaps the member for South West Norfolk can now get behind getting that school built, rather than thinking it's only going to cost 5 million. The true cost is far greater, which we've been trying to explain to him for some time. So well done there. We're really pleased that that's happening. Any other Cabinet members got any announcements or updates? No? Right, then we'll move on. Item 6 is the public question time, and the list of public questions and responses has been circulated and published on the website. I can't see anyone in the chamber who's entitled to a supplementary, so we'll move on then to item 7, local member questions, and the list of local member questions and responses has been circulated and also published on the website. There are no councillors sitting in the body of the chamber who are entitled to ask a supplementary. So we'll take that as read and move on to item 8, which is fee levels in adult social care for 2026-27. It starts on page 31 of the agenda, and I'd like to ask Councillor Alison Thomas to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just some context around this paper. We have a duty to have an annual review of fee levels, which must have due regard to our duty under the Care Act, which is to support the care market, to support sustainability and choice, but also balancing that with our wider duty, which is to deliver a balanced council budget. The fee uplift is detailed in 2.9 in your papers, but I think we all need to have some context that the increases in national insurance, staffing costs and the national living wage have impacted the balance between non-staff and staff costs. This has also had a profound effect on the council as an employer, but also our ability to fund changes impacting the care market as they were introduced, regrettably, without any increase to council funding, which could have been passed on to care providers. Just to give some context, those changes alone introduced an £11 million pressure. And just as a further context, I just wanted to mention to everybody that a 1 pence, not £1, a 1 pence increase in the national living wage puts in a £300,000 pressure onto the budget. So that is a real example of the context of the conflicting pressures that this decision around fee level uplifts has had to be made. There have been some key principles applied in that decision making. Firstly, as I've mentioned, our duties under the Care Act to support the market around quality, choice and sustainability. Our legal duties and my duty as a Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care to ensure that we deliver a balanced budget within the Council. An important exercise around benchmarking ourselves against our comparator authorities to make sure that we're not paying lower levels of fees or much higher levels of fees. And there's quite a lot of detail about the benchmarking data in the paper. We have to provide value for money. We also need to ensure that we've demonstrated that we've engaged with the care market. We've had detailed conversations with NORCA, who represent care providers, and the discussions around that are outlined in 1.13 to 1.17. The proposed uplift in the paper ranges between 3.2% and 3.63%, and that's informed by detailed analysis of each element of the care sector. So there will be some care providers who will be at the lower level, and there will be some that will have a slightly higher level. And that is very much around the impact on those particular elements of the care sector. These figures are all informed by the Consumer Price Index, and the low level of 3.2% is actually at the current rate of inflation. So the proposed fee uplift for this year is 13.97 million, so just shy of 14 million. And that forms part of an overall investment in the care market of over 60 million over 3 years. The recommendations can be found on page 33. What this paper highlights, I believe, is the ongoing underfunding of local government by Westminster and the underfunding of adult social care in particular. This creates challenge and tension within the Norfolk care system. We therefore, I would say, Leader and Cabinet, we can't let up on our ongoing lobbying of government for a more realistic funding package for social care. This is a nettle that must be grasped. I think that's all I need to say, but as I say, the recommendations are found on page 33. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask if there are any comments or questions on this paper, please? Councillor Jamieson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Thomas. You outlined the pressures and problems, financial problems associated with this uplift extremely clearly. I mean, the paper makes clear that you'll see it later on in the agenda. The Council faces cost pressures of over 100 million for the next financial year. we have built in 120 million additional support for adult social care over the previous 2 years, and there's a further 36.7 million being built into this year. So the council is not funded by central government or indeed by local council taxation to the full extent of these pressures, and it's important, obviously, that we have to deliver at all times a legally required balanced budget. And thus we have indicated this, we are looking for some £42 million worth of savings in this financial year. So under these circumstances, I think that we have found another 13.97 million as an upfront cost increase for this sector, and we'd look forward to working with that sector to ensure that the central government, provides adequate funding in this area. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? No? I'll move you to the recommendations then on page 33, which are 1, to agree an award to award a fee uplift of 13.97 million in accordance with the detail and fee uplift percentages which are set out in section 2. To note the risks presented in the paper due to the need to balance financial pressures for the market alongside affordability to the county council, and to consider any mitigating actions as part of wider county council budget setting decisions alongside the continued need to lobby government for fair funding for Norfolk. Can I ask for all those in favour to please show?
Agreed.
Thank you. So we'll move on to item 9, which is the Adult Social Care Sufficiency Paper. It starts on page 89, and I'm going to invite Councillor Alison Thomas to introduce this report, please.
Thank you again, Leader. This paper provides a social care context for the later paper on the transformation of Norse Care and the ending of the block contracts that arrangements with Norse Care, which come to an end at the end of March 2026. The sufficiency requirements are split into 2 categories. Our sufficiency around existing residents, ensuring continuity for some of our most vulnerable residents in Norfolk, and the future care needs for Norfolk County Council as a whole. The paper only focuses on residential care, as the housing with care element of our contracts, which also forms part of the block contract, that is being procured via a separate process. We must be sure within adult social care that any decision taken on Norse Care transformation is fully informed by our ongoing need to ensure sufficiency within the care market at a cost that we can afford. The key principles for me are that we must ensure that existing residents can continue to be cared for in their home with no change to their care packages, unless, of course, their care needs have changed. That care charges to adult social care remain within existing weekly rates to ensure that our proposed budget meets the costs and we can continue to deliver high quality via good or outstanding provision, affordable care. The full details about this can be found in 2.2 to 2.27. Future placements will be secured via a tender process at an affordable rate and will comprise of some block contracts. This process is outlined from 2.8 to 2.14. It must be stressed that this is an open tender process and any provider can bid for the block contracts, providing they can deliver good or outstanding care, and there is no assumption on who will be successful in that procurement process. This is a key decision. The recommendations can be found on page 90. It should be noted that if Cabinet were not minded to proceed with the recommendations, then it would put the sustainability of the Norfolk care market at risk. We must also remember that the current contract with Norse ends in March, and they have indicated that they don't wish to continue, but will support the transition to any new provider. So the do nothing, in my view, is not an option. This contract is coming to an end and we must make pragmatic and sensible and professional decisions around the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions on this report? Councillor Jamieson.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Councillor Thomas, again, an extremely coherent introduction to the report, and I will be covering it in greater detail later in this agenda, because it cannot be seen, the whole concept of sufficiency of care cannot be seen in isolation, but within the broader context of everything that we've been doing. I would just simply note that this paper follows on from papers which Cabinet have already received and have been in the public domain in August 24, in November 24, and crucially in June 25, Norfolk County Council's owned residential care provision and care contracts post-March 2026. As you so rightly say, the contract with Norse expires at the end of 2026. It's inconceivable that we would not look carefully at how that contract was remade. The key considerations for me overriding these proposals are that we need to develop the Norse Care estate. That's clearly set out under consideration 1 in point 1.4, and of course consideration 2, that existing tenants are looked after and cared for at current rates is clearly identified there. So I will go into greater detail later on, but I think this approach will ensure that we have reduced, as far as we possibly can, any risk of sourcing care at prices that will be unaffordable in the future. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions on this report? I can't see anyone indicating. We know that we have to be extremely responsible in this situation, and so it's essential that we ensure there is sufficient provision for the people in our county. So I will read out the recommendations to you so that you can make an informed decision. Cabinet is asked to agree to the approach as outlined in section 2 concerning adult social care sufficiency. It's important to note that this is one of the decision-making principles for the transformation of the Norse Care estate. And this includes the outcome of the all inquiries process as led by Cushman and Wakefield. Recommendation 2 is to delegate to the Director of Procurement and Sustainability, in consultation with the Executive Director of Adult Social Services and the Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care, the authority to put in place new contractual arrangements that directly meet the identified sufficiency requirements, and details of the total contract value are detailed in section 2.11. Can I ask for all those members in favour to please show?
Agreed.
Thank you. That's carried. So we'll move on to item 10, which is the Dedicated Schools Grant, the DSG, the funding for 2026-27. It's on the supplementary agenda, it's page A2, and I'm going to invite Councillor Penny Carpenter to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Leader. This paper before you today was in the main produced by Dawn Fowler, Finance Business Partner in Children's Services, and James Wilson from our senior leadership team. I cannot let this opportunity pass by for allowing me to personally to acknowledge Dawn for her expertise, extensive knowledge of the most complex and quite frankly the best technical paper I believe I have ever presented to Cabinet. So as I introduce the paper starting on page A2, against the background of major national challenges around the funding of our schools and in turn support for our families and children who also require additional support. We have in the past spoken about the most pressing requirement from governmental reform to both policy and resourcing, which government has acknowledged our position and appreciation to our position and other local authorities. However, we have seen very little information at present and ultimately what this would mean for Norfolk, and I cannot stress enough that unfortunately, regrettably, the funding for 26-27 was extremely disappointing, and it is now at a critical point when government urgently need to expedite reforms and finances to support local authorities. Norfolk's funding for education has always been below what is needed, and this affects the level of resource in school budgets and in the high needs block for children with SEN, both of which are under a lot of strain. But in recent years, it has become clearer and clearer that there is a major national challenge in relation to the system of support for children with SEN, which is not working for children and leading to unsustainable financial strain. Locally, we are delivering huge transformation, but national governments have failed to grip this quickly enough. Government therefore need to urgently provide more money to schools and local authorities, as well as announcing a comprehensive package of reforms to build an inclusive education system which works for all children. At this point, the government have told us very little about their planned reforms and how they plan to address the financial situations, putting us in a very difficult position in setting a budget. The specific DSG allocations for local authorities were made just before Christmas and were very disappointing. We hope they only represent an interim announcement ahead of a wider changes, but the allocation of funding to both schools and the high needs block was substantially lower than anticipated and does not cover the costs, so actually worsens the financial position locally. The paper sets out a range of changes to the local funding mechanisms for schools and for the high needs block, and all of these decisions have been consulted on extensively and supported via the Schools Forum. The High Needs Block budget continues to support all elements of our transformation programme, including investments in more specialist placements and more support wrapped around children and families and more top-up funding for schools. We are committed to continuing to meet the needs of children and not cutting support. However, that does mean that the size of the financial deficit continues to rise, which is unsustainable without government support. Equally, we would acknowledge that schools' budgets will continue to be very tight, as they are also having to spend a greater proportion of funding on support for children with SEND. Early years funding appears to fare slightly better, with a higher percentage increase in funding rates. However, for 2-year-olds and under, this is below the national living wage increase, and whilst 3- and 4-year-old is more positive, this is on the back of many years of insufficient increases to cover rising costs, such as increasing business rates and the funding rate, which providers consistently tell us below the level needed to deliver high-quality, flexible provision. Norfolk is taking a local decision to allocate the highest possible early years funding rates to providers, as we think this will support providers to create more places and support more children to have a more positive experience of early education. But Norfolk continues to deliver our transformational programmes, and we continue to strengthen our partnerships with families and schools, colleges and our many partner agencies in order that we can support children in the most challenging of circumstances. Our proposal set out our budget for DSG, which is designed to fund all parts of the system in the fairest way in order that children's needs are met. The recommendations can be found on page A5 of your papers on the supplementary agenda, where there are 5 recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions on this report, please? Councillor Jamieson?
Yes, first of all, I would absolutely agree with Councillor Carpenter's comments in relation to the quality, the depth, the detail of this report. It's to be, officers to be commended on this. And the proposal to remove the 9.7 million schools block to the high needs block transfer in 26-27 will increase mainstream schools' budget shares, whilst also raising expectations for schools to fund more SEND provision through higher notional SEND allocations, which will bring Norfolk closer to the national average and the national funding formula. But overall, however, the point has been made very clearly by Councillor Carpenter that there is insufficient funding in this system, and the most significant financial risk facing Norfolk County Council is the escalating deficit in the high needs block of this dedicated schools grant. Successive governments have provided insufficient funding to meet the rising SEND demand following the Children and Families Act of 2014, and that will leave Norfolk with a forecast cumulative DSG deficit of 180 million by the end of the plan, by 26-27. This is a national problem. It requires a national solution. Carrying such a deficit reduces cash balances, increases borrowing, cuts investment income, and is estimated to cost at least 20 million a year in revenue by 2028. The impact is substantial. The statutory override, which currently exists, merely defers recognition of an unsustainable liability that the government must ultimately resolve. This is not an issue of Norfolk County Council's making. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? I think Councillor Jamieson has made it very clear that we find ourselves in this position as a result of continuing underfunding for this particular service. And we've had to top the money that we receive up year on year just to meet our statutory requirements. We've had no choice. It's simply not fair. It's a debt not of our making, and it needs to be addressed by central government. Servicing this debt cripples our budget, and something has to be done about it. So we welcome the government's intention to reform the system. However, that needs to be done sooner rather than later, please, because the next year's pressures are going to be greater and so on. As Councillor Jamieson has outlined, by 2028 we're looking at £20 million a year just in interest, and that's simply not fair on this council or on others who are in a similar position. They are staggering figures, absolutely staggering. So this needs addressing straight away. Right, so I will point you to the recommendations which Councillor Carpenter has outlined are on page A5 to A6. I'm not going to read them all out because there's quite a lot of them and they're quite wordy. So can I ask for all those in favour to please show?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. So we'll move on to item 11, which is reshaping the fostering service. It starts on page 111, and I'm going to ask Councillor Penny Carpenter to introduce the report, please.
Thank you. Children's Services brought a full business case to informal Cabinet covering 3 pillars of our recommendations for the what's going on within the fostering service at the moment. So that was remuneration and recognition, expand therapeutic support, and improved practical support. We have successfully done that, and growth has been agreed to invest in this programme of work and has been identified starting in April. So this paper is the formal process to promote the positive investment we will be making to respond to the growing need for foster carers and in recognition of the very important work they undertake. Norfolk generally mirrors the national picture. We have around 1,000 children in care, but only around 320 mainstream fostering households within our in-care fostering service. And on average, 5 new children enter care every week, and we don't have enough foster families to meet their needs. This means children who could thrive in families are living in high-cost residential care, often adding to their trauma and, as always, driving up costs. You'll be surprised to know the average costs of care per child do vary quite vastly, depending on their type of care provision. So residential for a year is £297,000. Independent fostering agency is £52,800, and our foster service is £44,500. Analysis in summer 2025 showed us there were 37 children in residential homes whose needs align with foster family care. If these children could be supported to move into foster families, we could avoid a cost over £9 million annually. Our 3-year transformation plan, it responds to foster care feedback and national reforms, aligning with Norfolk's Flourish vision and the council plan. It is an investor-safe approach built on 3 pillars. As I have just outlined, remuneration and recognition, 15% uplift to all mainstream and kinship carer fees, extra uplift for teenagers, plus 10% for ages 10 to 13 and 20% for ages 14 plus, and improved long service rewards for foster carers, £500 at 5 years, rising to 2,000 at 20 years and beyond. And why does this matter? The financial concerns area, top barrier to fostering, and the Fostering Network 2024, only 25% of carers nationally say fees cover essential costs. We are expanding our therapeutic support. The creation of a therapeutic fostering team, that's 4.5 full-time equivalent clinicians and 1 clinical team manager. Trauma-informed consultations, bespoke support plans and specialist training. And why does this matter? Foster carers consistently report the lack of support, specialist support, as a key reason for burnout and resignation. Children with trauma and complex needs require therapeutic care to thrive. Without it, breakdowns occur, leading to costly residential care. Providing systematic trauma-informed support strengthens carers' confidence and resilience, improving stability and outcomes for children. This approach is innovative for the local authority and positions Norfolk as a leader in therapeutic fostering practice. Our improved practical support offer. Specialist fostering team will provide peer support hubs, building on the Mockingbird model, the reintroduction of carer support workers to reduce admin burden for social workers and provide hands-on help, improve support during allegations, and transformation of short breaks care for children with disabilities. And why does this matter? Day-to-day practical support prevents burnout and breakdowns, which are major drivers major drivers within the families. Peer networks and specialist hubs reduce isolation and create communities of practice, proven to retain carers and avoid placement disruption. The reintroducing of the carer support workers fees, social workers to focus on relationship-based practice and improving quality of care. Enhanced support during allegations removes the significant barrier to fostering teenagers and children with complex needs. At the heart of this transformation is the need to deliver better outcomes for children through more family-based care, reduced trauma, and improved stability while ensuring financial sustainability of the council. Norfolk faces a critical shortfall in foster carers, and without action, more children will remain in costly residential care. Success depends on striking the right balance. Fee uplifts alone won't improve recruitment and retention, and support without fair pay won't attract new carers. By combining fair remuneration with expanded therapeutic and practical support, we have created a holistic offer that recruits, retains, and empowers foster carers, enabling Norfolk to lead nationally in fostering innovation and delivering lasting change. The recommendation on the transformation plan you will find on page 112. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Councillor Wymar.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to support this paper. It means a great deal to me. As someone, I've been lucky enough, really, to have worked as part of the fostering team and as a foster carer, and the long distance past in residential care. So I absolutely know how children can thrive in the right environment. And fostering, foster home is absolutely the right environment. A child is best in a family rather than in a residential home, which can be many, many miles away. So well away from their support network, from their families, etc. So bringing children back into care, in our care with foster carers, is absolutely the right thing to do. I also know it's a really fulfilling experience to see the changes in a child, to actually see them move on to their forever families. And I've been lucky enough, once again, to actually remain in contact with most of the children that we did that with. And I've seen them thrive, really thrive. And that's a fantastic thing to see. So I just wanted to say, this is very much about being child-focused, which is absolutely what we should do. And I just want to recommend to anyone, really, who's thinking about being a foster carer, to come forward and have a chat with our team, because I think it's a really fulfilling thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Leader. I wanted to welcome this report and the huge amount of work that's gone into looking at how we support foster carers into the future. I don't think we can underestimate the value that Norfolk foster carers give to Norfolk children. It's a hugely rewarding task, as Councillor Wymark has just outlined. But I think it's fair to say that paying more alone isn't the answer. The most important thing is that those foster carers know that there is help and support there to enable them to provide the best nurturing care they can for a child in their care. But at times that will be challenging, and they need to have the department to turn to and have that therapeutic support available when they need it. Because sustaining a placement for a child who's settled with a foster carer is of paramount importance. So I really welcome the report. I welcome the drive across Norfolk for us to find more foster carers. It is a hugely valuable role, and I don't think we can underestimate the impact that the wonderful foster carers that we do have that work with Norfolk County Council and those that work for other agencies provide to children every single day. So I welcome the recommendations and hope that this helps to confirm the value that we in which and high regard in which we hold foster carers across the county.
Thank you. Councillor Carpenter, your microphone's still on, by the way. Okay. Is there anyone else who wants to comment or question? Councillor Jemison.
Yeah, I make a quick comment. This is, in sort of bold terms, it's a classic invest to save project, but it is so much more than that. The numbers are clearly shown on page 113, item 1 point, or paragraph 1.6, which gives you the financial point, but the point made by Councillors Carpenter and Thomas in relation to the wraparound help and support being so vital to make sure that this works is extremely relevant, and I would support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? I think we all know that the best place for children is in a family setting. There are some children who can't be placed that way, but it's quite clear in the papers that it can be up to 6 times more expensive to keep a child in care than in a foster placement, and fostering is the best place for those children that can go into foster care. Foster families are absolute heroes in our society, and we need to recognise them as such. It's essential that we support them to do this vital work, and it's essential that we encourage more people to get into what is a really worthwhile thing to do, as Councillor Wymark has said, because he has real practical experience of that, and he can testify to that. So anybody who is interested in the slightest, please contact us, and we can give you lots more information and hopefully welcome you into being one of our foster families, and you can get that satisfaction from knowing that you've done the best possible for a child in Norfolk who really, really needs your support. And on that matter, I'd like to thank our partners who also help us with this. For example, Stephen Croker at the Norwich Theatre Royal, who gave 500 free tickets to foster carers and their families to go and see the Panto at Christmas, and they all had the most marvellous time. They were treated like royalty, and that is the sort of recognition that our foster families deserve. And I'd like to thank him so much for doing that. It made so much difference to those children and the families, and the sort of whooping and cheering that was going on from the children when they were sort of taking part in the Panto was lovely to see. It really was. So thank you to him, and thank you to everyone else who supports those families. They are vital for the well-being of our children. So the recommendations are on page 112, as has been said, and we're just asked to review and approve the proposed transformation plan. Can I ask for all those in favour to please show?
Agreed.
Thank you. So item 12 is the 2026-27 revenue budget, and the medium-term financial strategy for 26 to 30 starts on page 210 of your agenda. And I'd like to introduce Councillor Andrew Jamieson to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. So, colleagues, I am pleased to present this, my 7th robust and balanced budget to Cabinet. This budget has been developed in the context of continued economic uncertainty, persistent inflationary pressure, rising demand for services as households and communities continue to feel the impact of the cost of living crisis. These pressures are not short-term. Inflation has permanently lifted our cost base and many key areas, particularly social care, placements and the Commission services. Whilst this is a budget based on fiscal responsibility, based on a long-term strategy, it is grounded in realism and discipline. It is a budget in answer to the financial environment that we're operating in, and it's not the one that we would like to be in. It protects and develops essential services whilst continuing to invest in Norfolk's future. Last week, the Bank of England confirmed that inflation remains stubborn. CPI stood at 3.4% and, whilst it's forecast to fall, the Office of Budget Responsibility expects inflation to remain above target at over 2.2% in 26-27. At the same time, local government funding reforms have significantly reduced our year-on-year funding increases, particularly for counties like Norfolk. This is a volatile and uncertain environment, and one in which we cannot afford to be complacent. Every decision in this budget reflects the need to deploy limited resources in the best possible way, prioritising the most vulnerable while sustaining our wider public services. And against this backdrop, for 26-27, this budget delivers 42.3 million of savings and in particular inefficiencies. It invests a total of 76.3 million new funding in frontline services and in the local economy. It proposes a 4.9% council tax increase in line with government assumptions, and it achieves a balanced and sustainable position. This has required difficult decisions across every directorate, but it is a budget that is prudent, it is realistic, and it is deliverable. Colleagues will know that local government has faced nearly 2 decades of constrained funding alongside significantly rising demand. And unlike central government or the NHS, we must balance our books every year. Since 2011, this council has delivered £652 million worth of savings through transformation, efficiency and redesign. The scale of savings is unprecedented and increasingly difficult to repeat. Our biggest pressures remain adult social care demand, children's services placement costs, and, as was graphically explained earlier, the SEND system. SEND is a national failure with local consequences here. I want to be very clear about SEND. Indeed, the Director of Finance sets the position out clearly in his report. And whilst confirming that this budget is robust, he states that the SEND deficit remains the most significant financial risk facing this council. Norfolk's SEND deficit is forecast to reach around 180 million by March 2026 and to grow further before government takes responsibility in 2028. But this is not a deficit of Norfolk's making. It is a result of successive governments' inaction, structural underfunding, and a system that is broken nationally. Yet, while the government retains responsibility for the system, Norfolk's taxpayers are paying the price. I have been clear that we are not borrowing to fund the deficit directly, but the impact of the deficit is that we're borrowing earlier than planned to deliver our capital programme. The revenue budget impact of this amounts to millions of pounds each year in interest costs and lost investment income because of this deficit. If the government does not act, that this cost will rise to around 20 million a year for interest costs alone by the time this deficit transfers. That's 20 million a year that would otherwise be used to support local care, social care, highways, early help or prevention. But instead, it is being used to cash flow the government underfunding of this service. We cannot borrow to fund SEND deficits. We cannot solve this locally. And we still do not have clarity on how the government intends to deal with the historic SEND debt. We await announcement of this, hopefully in the final settlement. But this remains the greatest financial risk facing local governments nationally. Alongside SEND, the budget has been shaped by an exceptionally difficult provisional settlement for rural authorities. For Norfolk, the settlement provides very little additional government funding beyond council tax. In fact, for the period from now until 28-29, over 90% of future funding growth for rural and shire counties is assumed to come from council tax. Only around 8% comes from additional core grant. This is not fair, and it is not sustainable. The removal of remoteness from most funding formulae, the continuation of the recovery grant that not only does not benefit Norfolk, it wrenches funding from shires to metropolitan areas. This ongoing redistribution of funding towards urban areas unfairly disadvantages counties and the people who live there. Services, of course, cost more to deliver in rural areas than in metropolitan areas. The government's funding system now assumes annual council tax increases just to stand still. That places increasing pressures on residents and cannot be the long-term solution. Turning to devolution and to local government reorganisation, colleagues will also be aware that this budget is being set alongside significant structural change. In December 24, the government published its English devolution white paper, Devolution by Default, and Norfolk and Suffolk were invited into the first wave of that reorganisation. This council submitted a single unitary business case in September 25. Government consultation closed earlier this month, and we must now await the Minded To decision, which is expected in March this year. New unitary arrangements are expected to be put in place from April 2028, with all assets, liabilities and commitments transferring to successor or authority, or indeed authorities. Between now and then, significant implementation costs will be incurred. Depending on the model chosen, these range from 22 million for a single unitary to over 34 million for a 3-unitary model. This budget includes an initial provision towards the County Council's share of these costs, although clearly they will need to be kept under review as the government confirms its decision. They are unavoidable, and they reinforce why simplicity, scale, and value for money must be at the heart of the reorganisation. The evidence is clear. Single unitary councils at county level reduce duplication, minimise disruption, and deliver better value for residents. Anything else risks adding cost to a system that can least afford it. Despite these pressures, this council delivers against our council strategy, Better Together for Norfolk. It protects essential services, particularly adults and children's social care. It supports inclusive economic growth and infrastructural investment. It continues ambitious transformation in both adults and children's services. It strengthens financial resilience through disciplined budgetary management, and it prepares the organisation, workforce and partners for change. This is not about salami slicing. It is about doing things differently, earlier and better. This is a prudent, robust and sustainable budget. It closes a substantial budget gap, it manages unavoidable pressures, and it positions Norfolk for the changes ahead. Above all, it reflects our responsibility as custodians of public money to protect the most vulnerable, to live within our means, and to ensure that every pound delivers maximum value for the people of Norfolk. It is not an easy budget to have put together, but it is a right one, and I thank you for all your assistance in putting it together. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments or questions on this report, please? Councillor Waymark.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Deputy Leader, for his report, because I think it's so extensive and detailed, and actually for all the officers who have been involved, because it's been a mammoth task. But I just wanted to talk about public health. On the face of it, public health have had an increase in their grant this year or for the next 3 years, which is very welcomed. However, there are lots of strings attached. There's lots of micromanagement top-down from central government, and I think we need to highlight that. Because whereas before we were given grants for helping people to stop smoking, to support people with drugs and alcohol issues and toothbrushing, they've been rolled up into the main grant. Previously, we could redirect money if we needed to into certain areas, because we do know our people best, we do know our population best. But the government have basically said, no, you can't do that. So 16 million of the 54 million is ring-fenced. It's absolutely ring-fenced. So we can't do anything else apart from roll that over from year to year. We can't say, actually, we know there's an issue, let's say with teenage pregnancy. So let's redirect that money elsewhere. We're not being allowed to do that. So I just want to highlight the fact that, yes, on the face of it, we've got an increase, but there's strings attached. And I just think it would be far better if the government let us do what we do best, which is actually look at our population and focus upon their needs rather than what the government thinks is best. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Plant.
Thank you, Chairman. And I would also congratulate the team that's put this together, because it is a very complex document. As far as I'm concerned, we have got more money this year from government for highways and for improvements and various other schemes within the highway budget, alongside the fact that, and my colleague just said it on his department, the reporting back is onerous on what is now government spending in this area. Our team has to send back, well, from what I'm reading, they'll probably have to develop a team that will work up how they're going to send it back, because it's over 3 directorates: infrastructure, community and environment, and strategy and transformation. So there's a lot of work in sending back the information the government wants in how we're spending the money that they're now giving us. And this is supposed to be devolution. We're supposed to be looking at things locally and spending the money locally, and yet central government are still controlling the strings and pulling the strings from central. So I think we just need to recognise that, leader, that we are getting more money, but the strings that are attached to it, if we don't match or meet the requirements of those, we lose the next tranche of funding. So there's a real need to make sure that the funding streams are met, that the reporting back is accurate, in order to continue getting the money that we need. We haven't got a problem with that. All I'm saying is, because it's growing, in the need for the government to understand what we're doing is growing. It's not what I would call devolution, where you devolve down to the next level of government. And it's going to be interesting, as the Deputy Leader has just said, when we come to devolution and we come to local government reform, who is telling who what, and where the responsibilities lie and who's going to be reporting it is another element of having to set up LGR and devolution.
Councillor Eagle.
Thank you. I'd actually like to pass my congratulations as well to the team and to the Deputy Leader, because obviously they've had to deliver a budget with essentially one arm tied behind their back, and all those constraints, and as we've already heard now, the loss of funding from the government and having to fund the send offset bit there is now equivalent to a significant point of any council tax rise, and it is a problem. And as my colleagues have alluded to, the government seems to be putting more constraints on everything of what you can and cannot do. Seems to be very little freedom. We hear the word devolution, but very little freedom. And I am grateful for the Deputy Leader for actually allowing me and always finding us some money for the economic team that allows us that freedom to do and actually create policies that help our residents rather than being tied and constrained by government funding again.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you. Well, this has been a mammoth task yet again, and I do thank Councillor Jameson and his team and the senior directors across the council, actually, who've brought together a budget that's robust and, as to the best of our ability, meets the challenges that we have in looking after Norfolk residents. I also wanted to acknowledge that we're starting this year, this new financial year, having delivered hopefully a balanced budget for this year. There were some challenges throughout the year, and I wanted to acknowledge that Adult Social Care worked hard to combat any overspends, because at least we're starting from a standing start rather than at a minus figure, which is always a challenge. We are putting more money into adult social care, but what I'm most pleased about, and I wanted to acknowledge in particular, was the huge amount of work that is going on in the department, my department, around the transformation of adult social care, which means that the savings that are being delivered through this budget are actually by transforming the service and providing better care and support to our residents, closer to home, helping people to remain independent for as long as possible, and helping them to engage with help and support that is perhaps on their doorstep that they hadn't been aware of in the past. We're in the process of having transformation festivals at the moment, and all the teams across the county are meeting to hear about the transformation and to sit in workshops and share their enthusiasm and their commitment to this project. It's going to be challenging. There is no doubt about that. There's a very big tanker that needs to be redirected, but I have absolutely every confidence that this will be delivered, and consequently, therefore, the budget will remain solid and sound through into the next financial year. So I do welcome the work from everybody and look forward to ensuring that we have a steady hand on the tiller for the next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you. I must also add my congratulations to the team around this. We have to do it every year, and the work involved with it is absolutely a tremendous amount of work from officers and Councillor Jameson to get us to this position. But from children's, as Alison has alluded to, my colleagues alluded to, that we have this financial restraint, but we still deliver. We're still delivering for adults and children within our communities. If you bear with me, I would just like to read a couple of things out which may sort of demonstrate that we are working to our maximum and we are always creative, we think out the box and we still deliver. So the new Roads Care Hub model has kept young people safely at home, preventing 395 children from entering long-term care over 4 years, and the savings of over around about £17 million. Our Titan travel training has supported 561 young people with SEND to travel independently, which is critical and crucial to their lives moving forward. Created 1,100 wraparound childcare places to support working families. Deliver the HAF programme, which is a big holiday fun programme, engaging over 18,000 children from 21 to 24. Reduce the number of agency social workers from 120 in 2019 to 5 in 2025, supporting stability and high quality practice. The music service and Norfolk Suffolk Music Hub has now reached over 60,000 young people annually, including 15,000 from disadvantaged backgrounds, with 90% of Norfolk schools offering training, curriculum support, SEND inclusion provision, and new progression routes. But we do acknowledge the financial pressure experienced nationally and locally for children's services departments. The transformation programme has contributed to creating a sustainable position through achieving a cumulative £143 million in savings over 7 years to end up 24-25. And the programme is currently on track to deliver financial savings of over 14 million for 25-26. That's just a taster of what we're doing in children's. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Bensley.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Just want to echo my colleagues' comments regarding Councillor Jameson and the team for putting this massive report together and doing all the hard work behind the scenes. It is a massive, massive challenge, and they continue to do it yearly, and that is of great credit to them, and please accept my thanks for doing that. I just wanted to highlight some things on our waste agenda that we do, which is under my brief, and I'd just like to say we have continued to deliver a valued service to Norfolk households and all our residents in Norfolk. At the recycling centres, we've had over 1 million visits with the new booking system, which is also safeguarding the safety of the teams and the officers in the sites and the general public, which I think is becoming more and more of a success as everybody's getting used to it, and that's evolving all the time. With the recycling, reusing and composting, we're now around 75% of our waste. That's what we're doing with it, recycling, reusing and composting. In the spring and autumn, our hazardous waste events still free that we hold at 7 recycling centres across our county, which help all of our households dispose of over 600 tonnes of paint and household chemicals safely. We continue to build on our reuse network, and we've started working with a new charity, Nelson's Journey for Norfolk. All of the charities that we raise funds for regarding that are all Norfolk-based charities, and that stops unwanted items going into waste and landfill. And also our teams continue to support waste reduction across Norfolk with our master composters. They're all volunteers that do great work, and also subsidise our home compost bins. And also we're now starting we're continuing with the Food Savvy campaigns, which help families budget with meals and also save on the waste. And we continue to work in reducing single-use products. So they're just a few things, Leader, but we continue to do more with the tools that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Carpenter.
Yes, Leader, thank you. Can I just come back on the waste from Councillor Bensley? Just really, this may not be appropriate time to say that, but I'd just like to say Norfolk Fire and Rescue Service for attending Caister Waste Recycling Centre twice within a couple of months, and getting there ever so rapidly and putting out the fires. Everybody was safe, and the operatives there did a sterling job as well of getting the public away. So I just wanted to say publicly thank you to Norfolk Fire and Rescue Service for their very rapid attendance to those 2 sites. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jamieson, did you want to come back?
Nope, I don't need to. Thank you all for your comments, and as I say, for your assistance in putting this budget together. It's taken us many weeks and months to do it, and you've been closely involved, and thank you very much for that.
Okay, right. Well, I have to say, did you say this was your 7th time doing this, Councillor Jamieson? I have to say, I think we get extreme value for money from you. I think you are a classic example of good value for money for this council. And let's be honest, fairer funding is anything but fair for Shire counties, as has been explained. It moves money towards more urban areas, and our taxpayers end up bearing the brunt of that. It hits their pockets directly. If we had the sort of funding formula that other areas get, we wouldn't have to put our council tax up by 4.99%, which is what we are expected to do by government. In fact, they build it into our base budget now. It's that cynical. And we would love to give our taxpayers a break, but government decisions prevent that. We have other opportunities. Local government reorganisation has been mentioned, but we need the right solution for Norfolk. And the best solution for Norfolk is a single county unitary, because it is the most streamlined system, and it will enable us to make good cost savings whilst sustaining those services across the whole of our county. We need to be strong to resist financial shocks, and a single county unitary is the only way forward. If we have anything else, we could find that it costs our taxpayers even more. And we need to hand this council over in good order to whatever that unitary structure looks like. And I think we're well on the way to doing that today. We've mentioned devolution as well. That is a pot of money that will come down for economic development, which is great. However, the ring-fence pots of money that we get for the other services that we deliver are a double-edged sword, as has been outlined. Government should be able to trust us by now to spend this money wisely. We've done it over many, many years. We have an excellent track record, so we need devolution in our normal services as well as in the extra one for economic development and the mayoral combined authority. And classic examples of this, and the public don't understand, is we get things like bus service improvement funding, which is fantastic, and we use it in the right way. But we can't spread that money into anything else at all. It's completely locked down for the sort of purposes we can use it for. Another classic example is cycleways, and we're putting cycleways in Galston at the moment. And there's a lot of unrest from some people who think they'd rather see that money spent in other ways. We don't have that option. We spend it on those things which are government priorities, or we don't get it. It's as simple as that. We can't swing that money into anything else. If we had the opportunity to spread that money out, then we would be able to pick and choose things that local people want, which we feel might be a better use of that money. But we don't have that luxury, unfortunately. Anyway, we get to this point in the year, and there's a huge sigh of relief from the Section 151 officer when he agrees that we have a balanced budget that he can actually recommend to council. Other councils aren't necessarily in this position, but years of financial prudence have actually ensured that in the face of squeezed budgets from central government, that this council is in a strong position. And we won't be asking for special permission to hike council tax to 10%, like some have found they have to do. And we won't be declaring a Section 114, which effectively means that we're bankrupt and that they have to send commissioners in to take over the running of our services. We've looked after this council very well indeed, and I hope that the residents of Norfolk appreciate all the efforts that have been put in by our officers, by the teams, in our staff, by the Cabinet, and by our Deputy Leader, who oversees this, takes this under his financial wing every year. So we will be able to take this budget forward to full council. And then I'm sorry to have to say, folks, that we're going to have to start again and look at next year's budget. And we have another even steeper hill to climb next year. But I know that we can do it. And with your help, we will get us into a good financially stable position again next year and have another balanced budget. That is the task that we set us, and it gets harder every time. Anyway, I will point you to the recommendations now. They're on page 216 to 219. They are extensive. I'm not going to read them out, but I would ask for all those who are in favour of that to please show. Thank you. So we'll move on to item 13, which is the Annual Investment and Treasury Strategy 26-27. Starts on page 512. And Councillor Jamieson, could you please introduce this?
Thank you very much indeed, Chair, and thank you for your comments. So moving on from the revenue budget, really, it is the investment and treasury strategy is the management of the cash flows that fuel this vast array of services and investments in infrastructure and growth that we are putting together in the revenue budget. It's the boiler room, if you like. And the annual investment and treasury strategy sets out how we will manage the council's borrowing, their investments and their cash flow for the year ahead, ensuring that we remain financially resilient while supporting our capital programme. We continue to face, as I made clear previously, a difficult financial environment. Inflation is still above target, interest rates remain relatively high, and the council's cash reserves have tightened significantly due to pressures in demand-led services, especially SEND. And as a result, this strategy forecasts an additional £20 million borrowing at the end of this year and a total of 150 million new borrowing for 26-27 in order to maintain safe and sustainable cash levels. This is a significant change from the previous strategy, which, as you know, I was endeavouring to keep new borrowing at £50 million per annum. But it comes, as I've sought to make clear throughout the the relevant items in this agenda, it comes largely on the back of a failure by central government to deal with the SEND issues. Despite these challenges, the strategy remains firmly prudent. Borrowing will continue to be undertaken only for capital purposes, timed carefully to safeguard liquidity while securing best value. Our investment approach remains highly cautious. It's focused on security and liquidity. The strategy fully meets SIPFA prudential and treasury management codes, including all the updated minimum revenue provision statements and all the required prudential indicators. The capital prudential indicators are included in the main report. The MRP provision statement is there. Let's say the minimum revenue provision statement is there for 26-27. And I'd like you to note the list of authorised counterparties approve all the Treasury management prudential indicators, including the operational boundary and the authorised borrowing limit, which we have stayed within. And together these measures ensure that our borrowing plans remain affordable and sustainable, that we manage risk appropriately, and that we retain the liquidity that we need to deliver the Council's priorities. In summary, this strategy provides a responsible and robust framework for the managing of our Treasury activity in what remains an extremely challenging financial climate. Thank you.
Are there any comments or questions on this report? I can't see anyone indicating, so I thank the Deputy Leader for outlining the position that we are in. The recommendations are on page 512. They are to agree and to recommend to the County Council the annual investment and Treasury strategy for 26-27 as set out in Annex 1, and they include the capital prudential indicators included in the body of the report, the minimum revenue provision statement 26-27 in Appendix 1, the list of approved counterparties at Appendix 4, and the Treasury management prudential indicators detailed in Appendix 5. Can I ask for all those in favour to please show? Thank you. So we'll move on then to item 14, which is the capital strategy and programme for 26-27. Starts on page 571. Councillor Jamieson, can you introduce this, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. The Council needs to set a capital programme prior to the beginning of each financial year and to commit the revenue and capital resources required to deliver that programme. The capital programme continues to focus on the delivery of our core objectives as set out in Better Together for Norfolk, demonstrating the interconnections between healthy residents, resilient communities, care of the most vulnerable and growth in our economy. They're all interconnected. Our strategy, therefore, is to make a difference to our county's economic infrastructure, its educational infrastructure, whilst nurturing its environmental and cultural infrastructure. This year's strategy reflects a comprehensive review of the existing capital programme, resulting in a right-sized, prioritised and deliverable plan. The total proposed programme for 26 through to 2030 stands at just over £1 billion, incorporating both ongoing schemes and targeted adjustments to reflect updated delivery timelines, new funding allocations, and the requirements of the medium-term financial strategy. A key theme this year is improving deliverability. Significant slippage in previous years has led councils to model a managed slippage profile of 48 million across the medium-term financial strategy period to align the programme more realistically with actual capacity, planning timescales and funding certainty. And this means that we have successfully maintained stringent controls on capital spend in 25-26, which we do in part via the Capital Review Board, which is chaired by me. The prioritisation model, which is outlined in Appendix B, is from page 616, and this approach supports more robust financial planning and improves transparency over the timing of major schemes. The Capital Review Board have been working with services to critically review the prioritisation and timing of schemes in 25-26 and anticipates a further £17 million will slip through into future years. The planned slippage has been modelled into Table 5, which you'll see on page 587, paragraph 2.8. Given the scale of the revisions planned across the current capital programme, the Council is only proposing very limited additions to its capital programme, totals 12.433 million, and they're set out in paragraph 2.6 on page 239. The additions and realignments to that programme include the following: 15 million to the extension of the independent living scheme. This will be presented shortly. The realignment of capital versus revenue budget for the interactive community equipment store and the assistive technology project, which results in 2 million being transferred back to revenue over a 4-year period, and the transfer of Microsoft licensing costs, about 3.5 million, back to revenue expenditure, and the allocation of this capital funding to hardware replacement for Wi-Fi and storage facilities. There's 0.578 million realignment of the Norfolk Fire and Rescue Service fleet costs back into revenue as well. The programme continues to invest in the Council's highest priorities, including the highways maintenance and infrastructure supported by a multi-year DFT allocations totalling 336.9 million, the continued expansion of SEND provision aligned with national announcements and local sufficiency needs, major highway projects including West Winch and the Long Stratton bypass, independent living programme with a £15 million extension to support accommodation for adults with care needs, and it's £35 million extension to support accommodation with adults and care needs, and a digital infrastructure including hardware refresh, Wi-Fi updates, automation projects. There are fire and rescue upgrades as well, property rationalisation there, and environmental and decarbonisation schemes being put in place. The strategy reflects the implications of adopting IFRS 16, adding the right of use assets totalling 22.7 million and incorporating planned annual uplifts for future lease renewals. The programme will be funded through a mixture of prudential borrowing, capital receipts, external grants and contributions. I welcome the recent announcements from the DFT on multi-year capital grants allocated to Norfolk to support the maintenance and improvement of this county's highways network. Forecast borrowing for 25 through to 2030 will total 304 million at the moment. It's aligned with the Treasury Management Strategy's target of new borrowing each year once planned slippage is applied. Capital receipts remain essential for managing affordability, and there's a target of 20 million there over the next 4 years, dependent, of course, always on market conditions. The flexible use of capital receipts continues to support transformational change, with up to 1 million proposed for adult social care transformation. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Comments or questions from Cabinet? No? I think you've blown everybody's minds, actually. And I actually think that when we hand over our legacy to the new unitary structure, whatever that looks like, it's going to blow their minds too, because I don't think a lot of people actually understand the complexities or the size of the budget and all the things you've outlined, both revenue and capital here today, of what a county council of this size actually has to deal with. It is quite, I mean, we all sit and see it daily, and you have to knock several noughts off the end just to get it on the page sometimes. It is a massive budget. We have a large population. We have a very important services that we have to ensure that we deliver for our residents. And once again, thank you for all the hard work that's put in by all of the team. We invest in transformation. We invest in prevention. That's the right way forward. We could do so much more if we could actually free up some more cash to do that, and we would do that. And there are some fantastic schemes, including major new infrastructure coming forward, and we will continue to push for those, because that is what our population deserve. Norfolk needs to move forward. needs to modernise. We need we need economic development. We need new infrastructure. We need all sorts of things that we've not been able to deliver in the way that we'd want to. But hopefully with devolution, some of that money coming forward, we can start to do some of that in the future. So I will point you to the recommendations. They're on page 572 and 573. There are 6 of them. I'm not going to read them out, but I'd like to ask Cabinet if they will approve those, please.
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 15 is reports of Cabinet members and officer delegated decisions made since the last Cabinet meeting. You will see on there, I have made decisions on the response to the government consultation on proposals for local government reorganisation Norfolk and Suffolk. That is our one unitary bid for Norfolk, sorry, that's not, yes it is, there's one unitary bid for local government reorganisation. And the written response to the ministerial letter from Alison McGovern received on the 18th of December, which is also published. And then there are 2 decisions taken by the Cabinet Member for Highways, Infrastructure and Transport in Wymondham and in Norwich, which you will see on the papers. Those are just for noting. They're just for noting, aren't they? Yes, because they're individual member decisions. Right, so we'll move on then. Item 16 is the Independent Living Programme extension. And before we discuss this item, it's been marked as including 2 appendices which are exempt by virtue of paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act, because it contains confidential detailed financial information around current and potential future scheme costs and provisional locations relating to current and projected Norfolk County Council contributions, as well as financial information supplied by partners as to their costs and projections. And disclosing information would have an impact on future transactions and the ability of Norfolk County Council to pursue best value. So can I ask you, colleagues, do we agree that the appendices to the Independent Living Programme extension should remain exempt? Okay. Yeah. So having considered the exempt information, can you confirm if you're confident that Cabinet can reach a decision without discussing the contents of the appendices? Yes? That means we can discuss the report without moving into a closed session, but you must ensure that no reference is made to any exempt information and resolve to note the exempt appendices as part of the process. So we'll now move on to discussion of the report. I'm going to ask Councillor Alison Thomas if she'd like to introduce this report, please.
Thank you. I would like to introduce this report, and I'm very pleased that it's being heard in public because I think there's some great news contained within it. Norfolk County Council embarked on a very innovative and challenging capital programme in 2018 to deliver independent living provision to Norfolk residents. There was an identified need for 1,135 places, and the council committed a capital sum of £29 million to deliver against that need. Over the last 7 or 8 years, 603 places have been secured, but unfortunately increased market costs and delays that came about because of COVID, neutrality, which caused huge delays in the planning process for many of the schemes, and the war in Ukraine have meant that the funds haven't stretched as far as we would have hoped and haven't delivered as many places as we'd initially planned for. It's been an ambitious project, and it's already delivered some outstanding provision across the county, actually, but with projects that are already completed in Fakenham and Acle, and some that are progressing very quickly towards completion in Hunstanton and Stalham. And in fact, Councillor Jemison and I were in Hunstanton not too long ago, up on the roof doing the topping out. I think they're now doing the internal fit out, and we're hoping to return there very soon. But also there are other projects which are now on site at Harleston and Kings Lynn. So this is a really broad spread of provision across the entire county. The completion of the projects under construction and those progressing through the planning process will exhaust that 29 million that I mentioned earlier. In order for us to deliver the remaining 532 places, Cabinet is being asked to agree to an additional capital sum of 35 million. The independent living provides an attractive option for residents to live independently with care and support at hand when needed. And it's a cheaper option than residential care, and it helps people to maintain their independence for longer. And I know that some of my Cabinet colleagues have been able to visit, I think many of us have been to Swallowtail in Acle and seen what wonderful provision is there. It's right next door to the doctor's surgery. It's adjacent to the centre of Acle. Everything is at hand, and it is the most wonderful place. It really is. The provision is exemplary. There's strong evidence to show that this type of provision supports the reducing the risk of falls, decreases attendance at the GP, even though it might be on the doorstep, and enhances people's well-being and their ongoing independence. You can find the recommendations on page 623. I very much hope that Cabinet will join with me in supporting this proposal so that we can see yet more provision being delivered across the county, because this is absolutely, I believe, what our capital investment should be for. It's to improve the outcomes for our residents and provide them with bespoke help and support at a time when they need it. So I'm hoping for your support, members. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you. In essence, this is about people and where they feel safe and they can be alone but don't feel lonely. And I think that's, for me, is really very powerful for everybody. And I think what Alison's department and Ian are doing is absolutely fantastic. It's required, very much required. And if I ever was in that position, I would be booking my place as well, because they are a very high standard. They do encourage everybody to speak with each other, have afternoon teas or dinners together or whatever. So you are still a part of the larger community, but you're still within your own community, where relationships and friends can still thrive. So for me, it's one of the most important things we can do as a society, and to support older people and vulnerable people. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wymark.
Thank you, Leader. I want to support this recommendation. I do see the independent living units as so important for people going forward. I mean, I've been lucky enough to say to go to Fakenham during construction and also to Acle. And I've been to Acle many times actually since it's been built out. And it really is a community facility. And I think that's the whole point. It is a community, it's right in the middle of the community, but also it's open for the community too. And I know they use it extensively, the coffee shop there, etc. So I say it's not just a place for people to live, although that's first and foremost what it is, but it's actually a place for them to be part of the community. And I think that is so important really going forward. You know, often care homes were separate too, you know, or seen as separate too, but they shouldn't be. They should be part of the community. And I say, you know, particularly in Acle, it's right next to the doctors, as Councillor Thomas said, but also the library as well. So all those facilities are on hand. So I welcome this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? No? Okay, well, I have to say that I don't know if anybody's read The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman, but it's set in a sort of wonderful sort of retirement village type setting where you can have a really good retirement and lots of activities right through to end of life care. And I sort of slightly wonder whether he's modelled that on one of our sort of independent living settings, which does that. And you hear sort of some of the wonderful things they get up to. I hope we don't have sort of gunslinging and stuff like that in any of our places. But if anybody sort of wonders what the model it looks like, if you read a book like that, you actually see it's in that sort of setting where they're in a lovely, wonderful gardens, and they have all sorts of activities laid on, and they can live their lives independently, but knowing that they've got that support behind them, and they've got a really good quality of life, and that's what we're trying to achieve here. Really is the future of care provision for older people, and it's a really good news story for us. And it's regrettable when government put in things like nutrient neutrality, which was obviously done with the best of intentions, but not realising what the unintended consequences would be for slowing down and stopping building all over the place. So perhaps government need to think a little more carefully before they introduce that sort of legislation about what else they might affect and how much more expensive they may make schemes like this, which are essential for the future provision of care in our county, and certainly I think other places in the country do similar things to this. Not everybody does, but this is definitely the way forward. So I will definitely be supporting the recommendations. I will point you to them now, and they are on, where are we? They are on page 623. There are three. One is to allocate up to £35 million to enable the Independent Living Capital Housing Programme to deliver the remaining target of 532 units of housing. And we're going to continue to fund programme costs of circa £230,000 per annum, is that right? From the £35 million capital allocation, and to delegate the individual decisions on schemes within the agreed capital envelope to the Executive Director of Adult Social Care in consultation with the lead Cabinet member. So can I ask for all those in favour to please show? Thank you. So we'll move on to the Finance Monitoring Report 2025-26, which is item 17. It's P8 and P9, which is November and December 2025, starts on page 648. Now, before we start discussing this item, it has been marked as including an appendix which is exempt by virtue of paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act, because it contains confidential financial information relating to a fostering family. So, colleagues, can we agree that the appendix to this report should be exempt? Agreed. So the appendix needs to remain exempt, and having considered the exempt information, can you confirm you're confident that Cabinet can reach a decision without discussing the contents of the appendix?
Yes.
Absolutely. So we move on to discussion of the report, and I will ask Councillor Andrew Jamieson to introduce it, please.
Yeah. Thanks, Chair. So while the focus of the financial items today are on the forthcoming financial year, the current financial monitoring report lays the foundation to next year to such an extent that I'm going to spend some little time on it. First of all, the net overspend in children's services has reduced to 6.2 million, and I am confident that this trend will continue. Although pressures from the cost of external placements remain intense, preventative, i.e. non-statutory work to keep families together continues to reduce the number of children in care. The Department was fully supported by Cabinet earlier today in agreeing to fund the proposals to reshape Norfolk's fostering service, which will further future-proof this preventative work. The over and underspends are summarised in Table 1 and detailed in the Revenue Annex on page 662. As you can see, within adults, purchase of care continues to be buffeted by both price and volume, but this well-managed department has mitigated these via a series of compensatory underspends across the piece. A reduction in waste volumes and lower than budgeted salary costs were the main reasons for underspends elsewhere, although the impact of capital slippage on the required MRP has also helped. As we discussed in the revenue budget item, and as clearly articulated in item 10 from page A18, the biggest single financial risk facing Norfolk is the deficit in the high needs block of the Dedicated Schools grant. We continue to fund central government's obligations in relation to SEND. The DSG is a ring-fenced grant administered on behalf of the Department for Education to ensure that primary and secondary education landscape remains robust, despite NCC itself having no direct control of or authority over the vast majority of secondary schools. This administration is wholly supportive of the major improvements that have demonstrably occurred as a result of cannibalisation. However, as noted earlier, poor legislation is letting down the mainstream system by creating unnecessary friction between parents, schools and councils. The medium-term implications were discussed earlier, but as can be seen from Table 3, we are expecting the cumulative deficit, which we are effectively cash flowing for government, to reach 180 million by the end of this financial year. This, in turn, has depleted the Council's cash reserves, resulting in a forecast cash balance of 26 million after allowing for an additional 20 million borrowing on top of the 23 million previously planned for this last quarter of the financial year. As noted in the earlier budget and Treasury strategy papers, the acceleration of the borrowing profile comes with a significant cost to the Council, especially at a time when interest rates remain over 4%. Third, the capital programme. The Capital Review Board has continued and extended an ongoing reprofiling of capital spending. This has led to a right-sizing of individual budgets to ensure that they remain consistent with an overall ability to deliver in a timely manner and a consequent reduction in the size of that programme, 276 million, and the amount of potential borrowing needed to fund it, which is 76 million. However, were it not for the DSG, our cash balances would be significantly higher, in fact, by the 180 million DSG overspend, and the Council would have the flexibility to delay borrowing for the capital programme during a period of higher interest rates. Notwithstanding, the county continues to pull in significant external funding, 56 million uplift in highways maintenance funding, over 25 million for a bus shelter improvement programme that was targeted at areas where the local community wished to see improvements. In Sheringham, despite a consultative, communitarian approach, designing, discussing, choosing, modifying a scheme to enhance the town, a last-minute populist pylon meant that this scheme has had to be abandoned. Yet one more example of how a populist drive-by shooting inevitably makes life that little bit nastier for the people at large. We will not, though, be diverted from our ambitions for developing this county. Not only have we committed to maintaining the library stock of our 47 libraries around the county, we continue with the development of community hubs, from Great Yarmouth to the one in Kings Lynn, which is shortly to be opened. They are parts of major urban rejuvenation projects, providing multi-use community hubs in town centres and refurbishing libraries. We're doing this in Sprowston, we're doing this in Hunstanton. We are investing in the museums. The Norwich Castle keep open to visitors in August, and we continue to enhance the cultural and heritage facilities elsewhere throughout the county. As well as the new special schools mentioned earlier, when we recall we are spending 120 million in this area. We've continued to see the rollout of specialist resource bases for schools and investment in the mainstream schools to help Norfolk's young people bridge the attainment gap with the rest of the country. So I am extremely proud of the work that you guys do day by day, and I'm very supportive insofar as one possibly can be from a financial perspective to help you do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments or questions on this report? No? Well, thank you very much, Councillor Jamieson, for outlining all of that. I think it highlights some of the really good work that's going on and ongoing always in this council, and we will continue to do that for our residents. That's what they elect us to do, and we will continue to strive to deliver for them. So I will move you to the recommendations, which are on page 648, 649. There are 8 of them. I'm not going to read them out. They're on the papers in front of you. Can I ask for all those in favour to please show? Agreed. Thank you very much. So move on to item 18, which is the residential care estate. It starts on page 694. And again, before we begin discussing this item, it's been marked as including an appendix which is exempt by virtue of paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act. because it contains information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information. Colleagues, do we agree that the appendix to residential care estate should be exempt?
Yes.
So having considered the exempt information, can you confirm if you are confident that Cabinet can reach a decision without discussing the contents of the appendix?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So we can discuss the report without moving into closed session, ensuring that no reference is made to any exempt information and resolving to note the exempt appendix. So we'll move on to discussion of the report, and I will hand over again to Councillor Andrew Jamieson.
Thank you, Chair. So this paper should be understood in conjunction with the two papers we discussed previously, the Independent Living Programme and, in particular, the Adult Social Care Sufficiency paper. It brings together an enormous amount of work, and I want to start by being clear about the purpose of what we are considering today. It is not change for change's sake. It is about meeting our statutory duties, protecting residents, and ensuring that adult social care in Norfolk is sustainable, affordable, and fit for the future. The contract with Norse Care ends in March 2026. That gave us a natural and responsible point to step back and ask three fundamental questions. Are the homes able to deal with the complexity of current care needs, so different now from the needs as perceived in 2010? Are we meeting our Care Act sufficiency duties? And are we delivering value for money for residents and taxpayers? Now, the honest answer is that the current model cannot continue unchanged. We all know how much the world has changed in the past 10, let alone 15 years. Whether that is around subsidy control legislation or the care market in Norfolk. A good example of how the world has changed is the expectations of older residents and the growth in housing with care. We've just agreed to commit a further 35 million to the 29 million already spent by Norfolk County Council to provide this total of 1,135 new affordable specialist housing for older people. Housing which is both what people want and reduces a reliance upon traditional, more expensive residential care. In addition, a new housing with care model is currently out for tender that will enable people to remain as independent for as long as possible through a strength-based enabling model of care delivery. On the other hand, we need a residential portfolio that answers residents' requirements now and well into the future. Following the creation of Norse Care, a start was made to transform the care estate. 3 new homes were built: Mayflower, Mountfield, and Lydia Eva. However, as colleagues know, the company pivoted with great acclaim to deal with COVID and the aftermath of that pandemic. Rocketing interest rates and the war in Ukraine meant the company could not afford to continue redevelopment. Most of the rest of the estate was built decades ago in response to what was then deemed the solution for standard residential care. But rooms are small, they lack ensuite facilities, layouts are outdated, and crucially, many homes struggle to meet the needs of residents that are more complex. Norse Care itself has made clear that continuing under the existing arrangements would require very significant capital investment, either by themselves or by the Council, at a time when our resources are under extreme pressure. It must be remembered that whilst Norse Group is a wholly owned company, it operates under the statutory fiduciary duties as a board. Those duties require directors to act in the best interests of the company as a going concern, to protect solvency and liquidity, and to take timely decisions where a service or a contract is no longer sustainable. Those duties are not overridden by political preference or by committee process. Given that context, in June 2025, Cabinet previously agreed a clear set of principles to guide all decision-making. These principles matter because they shape every recommendation in front of us today. There are three strategic themes: to transform the estate into modern, fit-for-purpose accommodation, to ensure value for money for adult social care, and to ensure value for money for residents. And underpinning those themes are some non-negotiables. Sufficiency of care places must actively inform every decision. Value for money must be demonstrable. Decisions must align with council policy, with law and governance, and everything must operate within real-world constraints: funding, workforce, and legislation. These principles are not abstract. They are applied directly to the proposals before Cabinet today. And taken together, the report explicitly links estate modernisation, the quality of care and reduction of long-term financial risk to the Council. Our starting point has been sufficiency, because it is our legal duty under the Care Act. Adult Social Care has undertaken a detailed, evidence-based sufficiency assessment, focusing on the availability of good and outstanding care, on affordability, on geographic coverage, and on future demand. That work has directly informed which homes are required, how many placements we need, and how the Norse Care estate fits into the wider care market. This is not about withdrawing from residential care. It's about ensuring that we have the right care in the right places at the right cost. So let me be absolutely clear on one point, because it matters most. No existing resident will be required to move as a result of this proposal. For residents whose care is funded by the Council, care will continue at the same assessed level. It will be delivered to the same Council specifications, and it will be funded at Council-agreed rates with uplifts only as approved by Cabinet. Residents retain their rights under the Care Act, including choice. If anyone wishes their placement to be reviewed, that will be handled under existing policy. And we're also very conscious of self-funders, and due diligence will focus on ensuring that no resident faces unreasonable fee increases simply because of a change in ownership. This approach minimises disruption, protects vulnerable people, and helps us manage placement costs responsibly. Alongside that, we must plan for the future. Adult Social Care will therefore undertake a competitive tender process to secure future capacity where sufficiency gaps exists. The key points there are that only providers offering good or outstanding care will be eligible. There are up to 115 placements across Norwich, West, East and South Norfolk. Initial contracts for 5 years, and the estimated value is around £5.5 million a year. This will be an open, fair and transparent process, fully compliant with procurement law, and contracts will be actively performance managed. Importantly, the outcome of this process will inform the final shape of the Norse Care sale, ensuring sufficiency is locked in before final decisions are taken. Turning to the estate itself, we ran a full open market process led by Cushman & Wakefield, one of the UK's leading healthcare property advisors. It was run over a number of stages. Over 20 parties expressed interest and put forward a proposal. We deliberately rejected bids that required vacant possession because forcing residents out of their homes would have been unacceptable and damaging to the care market. After a rigorous, multi-stage process involving adult social care, finance, property, procurement and Norse Care, Stowe Healthcare emerged as the preferred bidder. Stowe was selected because it offered the best consideration financially, was willing to acquire the entire estate, has a strong track record of good and outstanding CQC care, It already operates successfully in Norfolk and also in neighbouring Suffolk. It intends to continue running the homes as care homes and is preparing a significant capital investment programme to modernise the estate. Crucially, Stowe aligns with our 3 strategic themes: transformation, sufficiency and value for money. Today, Cabinet is being asked to agree an in-principle sale. This is not the final step. Further work will follow, including the detailed due diligence necessary, engagement with residents and families, and finalisation of care and investment commitments. Any final agreement will require appropriate financial sign-off and governance. So this is a complex and sensitive decision, but it is the right one. It protects existing residents, it secures sufficiency, it modernises an ageing estate, it improves value for money, and it reduces long-term financial risk to this council. And above all, it reflects our responsibility to plan ahead, not simply to preserve the past, but to ensure sustainable, high-quality care for Norfolk in the years ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions and comments? Alison, Councillor Thomas.
Thank you. Well, I think I would struggle to add anything to that comprehensive outline of the situation that Councillor Jameson has just given us. But I think it's important to hone in on some of the key points. And Councillor Jameson mentioned that we need to have the right care in the right place at the right cost. That is our responsibility to Norfolk residents, to ensure that we have the care that they need when they need it. And also that that care is being provided by an organisation that has evidence that they can provide good and outstanding care. In many of our changes to some of our contractual arrangements that we've been doing in recent years, particularly around our home care market, for example, we only engage with providers who can evidence that they have good and outstanding care. We have had many challenges about the quality of the care market in Norfolk over the years, and I'm very pleased to see the improvements that are coming. There are more to come, I'm sure, but a 5% increase in the care quality across Norfolk is very welcome. And that hasn't come about by accident. It's come about by the team working really hard with the care market, and they will continue to do so because, as I say, there is more headroom. There is more to do. But I wanted to also confirm that the communication with residents, and most importantly too, those employed within North's care homes, commenced at the point at which these papers became public. So people weren't left to read headlines in the EDP that told them that their care home may or may not be staying open, that it would potentially cause alarm. Everybody had the situation explained to them on the day. Care staff were reassured that actually, whilst their employer might change, their employment rights would remain. And just to reiterate what Councillor Jameson said, nobody would have to leave the care home that they are currently living in because the care will continue to be provided. That is, of course, unless people choose to, because some people may choose to leave. And, you know, we do have churn in the system when people's circumstances change. People don't always remain in the home that they are originally in, because for some people they might have gone into a care provision that doesn't provide nursing care, for example, and when their care needs change, they need to move into specialist provision. I also wanted to be absolutely clear that the member protocol was closely followed in this process. I, as a member with a care home in my division, received a letter on the day the papers were produced, again explaining the circumstances of the proposals within the North Care Estate paper, giving me the information, providing me with information that I could share with my parishes and my town council, and also giving me a contact of officers that I could speak to if I had any further questions or queries. So I think this process has been robust. When I was talking about the sufficiency paper earlier, I made it very clear that do nothing isn't an option. The contract is coming to an end at the end of March. That is almost, you know, we're almost now 8 weeks away. We can't sit here and say, well, actually, we're not going to do anything. That would have not been a responsible thing for us to do. It has taken a considerable amount of time for us to get to this point. And I'm sure that many of us here would have hoped that we'd have been here making this decision a little bit earlier. But we are where we are, and it's important that we do the responsible thing to provide safe, good quality, cost-effective care and support for those who need it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? No, well thank you for that. And I'd like to thank Norsecare for the service that they've provided for us over many years. We'd like to thank them for that. But it has been said the contract is coming to an end in March this year, and we need to make a decision about the future. We can't simply sit and do nothing. Times have moved on. This council has a modernising agenda. We can't be stuck in the past, and we can't refuse to revisit how and why we do certain things. And in this instance, it's the residential care offer to our residents, which we need to look at. So all members have been informed if they have a home that's affected in their division, and I would ask them to have a close look at that email and the information that's been provided so they can pass that on to relevant stakeholders in their area so that everyone has the right information at their fingertips. We have to do the right thing for Norfolk, and we will do that whilst protecting those that are affected. So I will point you to the recommendations. There are 4 of them. I'm going to read them out because they're very important. Cabinet is asked to agree the in-principle sale of Norsecare Limited to Stowe Healthcare, and for the transfer details, including the transfer value, to be agreed by the Director of Strategic Finance in consultation with the Leader, the Deputy Leader and the Board of Norse Group Limited, who will undertake the sale. We're going to formally declare on that basis that the 17 care homes that are owned by Norfolk County Council are surplus to council requirements, and that is something we have to do to make sure that item 1 of the recommendations is able to be enacted. The 3rd recommendation is to instruct the Director of Property in consultation with the Director of Strategic Finance and the Director of Legal Services and the Monitoring Officer to dispose of the 17 properties currently leased to Norsecare Limited through transfer of the freeholds to Norsecare Limited. And then 4thly, to authorise the Director of Property in consultation with the Director of Strategic Finance and the Director of Legal Services and the Monitoring Officer to agree the best consideration price for the transfer of those properties based on an independent valuation. Can I ask for all those in favour to please show?
Agreed.
Thank you. That is carried. So item 19 is exclusion of the public, and the decision on exclusion of the public was agreed as previously above, and we've discussed the report, so that item is crossed off. Item 20 is the exempt appendices 3 and 4 of the Independent Living Programme extension, and we are just asked that we've noted those appendices, which we've done. 21 is exempt appendix to the Finance Monitoring Report P8 and P9 November-December 2025, and we noted the exempt appendix. And item 22, the exempt appendix to Residential Care Estate Report, and we have noted the exempt appendix. So that brings us to the end of the meeting. I know it's been quite a long one this morning. I'd like to thank you all for your attendance, and thank you for those who have attended in person and for those who've been watching us on the YouTube channel. The next meeting of Cabinet is on Monday, the 2nd of March 2025. It's at 10 a.m. and it's here in the Council Chamber. Thank you.